Welcome back to another episode of the Sports Card. That is the Pick Six, not really a podcast, a YouTube show, because we don't have any Apple or any of that stuff. Because if we're being completely honest about the data, not many people watch sports card podcasts. They just don't. That's the real hard truth of it. I put a YouTube post, community post about it. I learned some things here this past week, and so we have to talk about it. But that's not what we're going to talk about this week. I'm just going off a little bit of a tangent. Dennis, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm good, my friend. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people watch. I mean, there's a handful of folks, but only the people that
nobody's watching. They're just listening. Like, okay, fine. Look, there's not many people listening. Okay, there we go.
Okay, well, that's true, but you can actually still watch it since it's a YouTube show. But I agree. I don't think there's that many. I think there's some that carry big numbers, but it's far and few between. But we enjoy the people that do listen to us, no matter how many you are.
No. What I'm saying is people are not listening to Apple, Spotify for sports card content is what I'm saying. The YouTube stuff, doing good. Lots of great shows on YouTube and lots of great kind of podcast style where it's longer form. What I'm saying is if you're looking for what I learned about the numbers on Apple, Spotify, the actual listening on a podcast, it is brutal. So anyway, little side note there, something I learned. You learn something new every day. But today we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about high card prices. Is there some sort of manipulation going on? There's buying groups. Who are the buying groups? Who are the people buying these cards? Are there lots of them? Are there a few? I don't know. Dennis, do you want to fire this thing off?
I mean, I don't know of any groups. I don't know who is selling cards. I don't know who's buying cards that are. I mean, we heard this back before. What's that?
Oh, no, I didn't say anything. I did say the buying group is Dennis.
Oh, God.
It's the
bank of DPZ. No, I think we heard this like a few years ago. There's these funding groups buying portfolios, so they're not paying attention to what they're buying. They're just buying the stars in PSA 10, or they're buying the market leaders, or looking at. They're not doing the due diligence to make sure they're protecting whatever, they're making smart buys. They're just, and that's what kind of, then that drove more people to go buy the cards. And all of a sudden you had this supply demand thing that happened. So I have no idea. I've heard that before. I'm hearing it again. So I guess my question is, where do these groups go? Like, did they just did they leave? And now they all got back together again, got the band back together, go, hey, let's go buy some more cards again like we did in 2021. And hopefully we don't screw it up this time. I don't know. I mean, when you talk about there's different kinds of buying groups. I mean, when you think about the Logo Man sale, you have some big players that have a lot of money and they went after that card. My curiosity is who lost that card? Who was the other bidder is what I would like to know. Because who won it, but there obviously was a couple bidders. I don't know whether 3 bidders. That would be interesting to know. How many bidders were at the end jacking that thing up and would have gone for more? But those kind of cards and those kind of sales, they're just out. They're so out of the purview of anything the rest of us are doing. It's like it doesn't. I kind of feel like it doesn't even count. I mean, yeah, it's good publicity, but it's not going to affect anything. I think everybody said that. Everybody's talked about that, so we don't need to say that again. I think we all agree to that.
I wish that we knew more about Shine. He's this one guy in our world that we don't know anything about. And I actually, Darren Ravel, who runs collect.com, he had posted something about that card, the 12.9 million. And I commented, these are guys that are journalists in the group. And they do a good job. Ben and Will and those guys do a good job. But it's like, man, how are we not getting an interview? If you guys are the guys, you're in front of Ruben, you're in front of all these folks, that should be an interview. It should be like, who are you that bought this? And how'd you rise to power? How do you have $100 million card collection? Like, what's your story? I would be interested in just knowing, what's your story? I mean, I think it would be an interesting, how did this group get together? How did you, the whole why behind it. And then also made me think too that I know of other kind of buying groups that are just less public about it. And I just wonder how many are there groups of 2 or 3 or 5 guys, gals that are buying cards like this. It's really interesting because in 2021, to your point, we had funds that came in and then sold it off for fractional pieces. It was like what was it? Collect or there was a few companies that did this, going back to 2021, where they were buying big cards.
Collectible or something like that.
Collectible. And there was a few of them. And, so you could trace that back to, okay, you just have they got some sort of fund, pulled together some investment money, and they've bought. And now we don't really hear much about those companies, but now they've been, I guess, maybe replaced by high-end buying groups, which is very interesting. And so I'm curious to see, just with all these new high net worths, these big sales, how many high net worth folks are getting in this, and how coordinated is it, and all that sort of a thing. I'm going to share screen here because we had a card, magnificent card. I know it's one that both of us can appreciate. And I think it's the highest selling 90s insert football card that's ever sold. I could be wrong, but I think it's this one, $372,000 at Fanatics Collect. It, of course, is the Barry Sanders green PMG. I think the football versions are numbered to 15, but this is a PSA 8, which is a really tough grade on these cards. And I don't think there's one that's graded higher than this one. It's a magnificent card. And I remember I saw some reactions to it like, oh my God, $372,000. That's crazy. And then I'm thinking, somebody just paid $500,000 or $600,000 for a Caitlin Clark, patch auto card. And I get it. It's an autograph. I get it. It's there's a patch there and whatever, but we're talking about Barry Sanders. We're talking about somebody with a huge, long time hobby following, a lot of collectors in the space, and probably his best card, or a top 3 best card for Barry Sanders. It's right up there with probably just a few cards. So why would it be crazy that this would sell for $370 when we see some of these prices? What do you think?
I mean, the Caitlin Clark stuff, I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get why that kind of money's being spent. I mean, I think she's great for the game. I don't understand that. That's a lot of money I'd take that money and I'd buy all kinds of, I could go through the list of the things I'd probably buy with that money before I buy that card. But there has to be someone out there that really wants that. It's like the important thing to think about with any of these sales and the cards that are selling for record highs. There has to be an end collector that's going to want that card 5-10 years from now, because the hot potato thing only goes for so long. Cards that bounce around like that, you're not. It kind of still goes back to what we said before. Like this card, this Barry Sanders green PMG, that is a card that is going to probably stay in that collection. That's someone who goes, I need that card because I think 372 is going to look awesome 5, 6, 10 years from now.
Yeah, I think someone buying $1 million card, they're thinking this is like Nat Turner buying, the green PMG Jordan he literally bought it for the same price. He bought it for $400,000 in 2019. I think, or 2000.
And how much is that probably worth now? That's
what they're thinking.
That's easily a multi-million-dollar card, in my opinion. Easily, Michael Jordan, easily. And it's an altered copy, because there's I think there's not even 10 of them.
There's 9. 9 got
destroyed, right? So it's so rare. And that's just the ship sailed on those. And those cards they're so big. Yeah, you probably need to get a group together to buy them. But then you're like, that's the whole fractional thing. I don't buy into that. I'm like, no. So I'm just lucky to buy the stuff I bought. And right now, some people are selling into this. I'm not selling PMGs. Even my reds that I have, I'm not selling my 24 karat gold. I mean, I know there's some interest out there for those, but I don't want to sell those cards because I think they're only going to go up in time. Now, are they making the runs right now? No, but I think down the road, the best cards for some of the bigger, more important players in the hobby are going to be the ones that do well. And I've said that a lot, but it's just true. So while it's fun to kind of chase different things, that always remains, that's going to hold true. And this sale for Barry is great for the 90s football market. I think this is a terrific thing. This is the kind of sale that I think could affect the football 90s market. I do. I don't think the logo man, MJ, Kobe will do anything, have any effect on anything. But this sale actually will for those types of cards. So you might think a green PMG for John Elway becomes a little bit more important, right? A green PMG for Jerry Rice becomes way more important. Those are, or Troy Aikman. I mean, he doesn't have the collector base like some of these guys have, but you start thinking about those players, right? You start thinking about different sets in the 90s for football now that are probably going to get a little bit more love. So I can see that happening, the correlation between those two things, and then appreciation of like, wow, this is like the best. Like, because think about some of the best football players ever, right? Jerry Rice, Barry Sanders. Well, everybody's like, I want their best cards, just like Griffey or Bonds or Jeter or MJ, Kobe, LeBron, you Curry. You're going to want their best cards. So,
and actually, if this is that buying group, Kevin O'Leary and those guys, they said they want the tippity top best stuff. And to me, I don't know who bought this card, but to me, this would be on the radar, unless they're only focused on basketball. But like, if I'm running that fund, I'd be like, that's a card we need to target. Like, I would be targeting this particular card.
Okay.
But
100%.
I know Shine and those guys, I just don't know how diverse are they going to go. Are they going to buy high-end vintage? Because I've only ever seen Shine buy Logo Mans and stuff. He's like a basketball card guy, basically, is what I've seen. So I'm really curious to see if they focus on basketball or if they're going to go with just top of the food chain collectibles, maybe even outside trading cards. Maybe it's other type stuff too. I'm curious to see. One thing that Kevin O'Leary said in an interview that struck me, because I think what we're trying to figure out here is this high-end price manipulation in some way. Is this high-end folks kind of playing? Are they playing some games here with some of these sales? And what I mean by that is, and people can do whatever they want with their money, and they can, this is not a regulated industry. So, you can buy, sell, whatever. But Kevin O'Leary made a comment to the effect of like, I will not be alive when that Kobe Jordan card, that Logo Man they just bought, sells again. That's what he said in an interview. So essentially the way that is, to me, what they're doing with it is they're vaulting that thing. And that is a long-term hold, store of value. And he compared it to like Bitcoin holdings. Like, he just wants to like put it away. And another thing he said, he compared to contemporary art. And he said, I'm not going to buy a $50,000 art print in contemporary art. You got to step up and buy a $40 million Pollock. And so I think he's viewing that card as the $40 million Pollock. And then you just sit on it. And then over time, because it's a one of one, because it's so rare, it just stays at the top. Price only moves up on it, kind of like that's the thought with it. Now, if this group turns around and sells that card in a year, or 2 years or something, then I'll have less confidence in what they're trying to do, or any of these buying groups. I don't mind if you're, look, buying groups can buy and sell, and that's part of the fun probably. And they're playing on the high end, so they're in the deep waters. But if you're trying to set up kind of a long-term fund where stuff gets packed away, that to me, that's a really cool kind of a way to invest in high-end stuff. And that's really how high-end art collectors do, how a lot of these high-end folks, that's how they do it, is they buy and they hold. So, but with sports cards, what we've seen over the last 5 years is a lot of buying and quick selling. And so I'm just curious to see how this goes. And look, they're one buying group. There could be many, many buying groups doing different things, but I think that's going to be an interesting, we'll have to see how these prices hold up, or does it continue to grow, or are we doing kind of a little 2021 again?
Yeah. And that's like we talked about last week. That remains to be seen whether some of these cards start popping up again. So if this Barry disappears forever, then we know that these cards are being held, and the people buying them at the top, 372, 12 million, 13 million. Yeah, I don't think those are manipulated. There's no shilling going on at that level. I think it's those people are buying those cards. You just got big wallets coming in and they're buying them. Now, I'd be curious. Right now, I'm looking at like you just some of the other run-ups, and the lesser expensive cards where there's opportunity to manipulate. Could there be something like that happening there? I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like I said, at the end of the day, there needs to be a collector for that card. And I just don't know how, unless it's an iconic set, like a red PMG, because I don't know how big the collector base is for Charles Barkley and David Robinson. I mean, David Robinson has a pretty good, decent collector base, but I don't know anybody I just don't know anybody that just collects Charles Barkley or just collects, there's a couple people I know who collect Ray Allen, but they're nothing like the collector base for, say, Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout or Ken Griffey Jr. or Jordan, Kobe, LeBron. Like, they're just different. There's a different level, right? Gretzky or these really I just think it's so big and vast that it makes the cards more liquid, easier to sell. The rare cards are, for those collector bases, they're just out of reach because they're so valuable, because there's such a demand for the very best card in the very best grade, that I think down the road, it's just common economics. Like down the road, people are going to want those cards. Now, the one-of-one thing is kind of fun. I mean, I think there's people that love collecting one-of-ones. There's nothing wrong with that. I'd worry about one-of-ones from just any player. But if you collect that player and you want that one-of-one because you're collecting, I think there's nothing wrong with that. Go get that card because it completes your set. It completes your collecting journey. I mean,
well, but what's the difference? What's the difference between a long-term investor and a collector? Because to me, if I'm a collector, I like the long-term investor. If it's true that Kevin O'Leary and some of these other buying groups are coming in, you're basically the same thing. Because the collector is always saying like, oh, well, you're just a flipper, or whatever. But a collector and a long-term investor, when you're talking about expensive cards, let's also caveat it with that. When we're talking about expensive cards, because a lot of times they're collectors in part. Look, I can collect Bobby Hebert cards and be comfortable with that because they're $2 cards. So yeah, they're like, I'm not selling. Yeah, because nobody's buying. They're friggin' Bobby Hebert cards. But if you are a long-term investor on this stuff, and that to me, it's almost equal to a long-term collector of high-end stuff. And I think of like Chris Hoge. I always bring up Hoge as an example because he's unique in that way to where he does buy certain things and he just holds it. And he does sell. I'm not saying he never sells anything, but he wants to collect a certain player and he wants to hold it and he wants to enjoy owning the card. He'll trade out of things here and there, but for the most part, he's putting a lot of thought into what he's getting. And those are, for the most part, long-term holds. But for somebody that's a collector like that, you want to have long-term investors. If that's who's involved, buying groups that are vaulting stuff away, if it's like a Marshall Fogel, then you like that because that doesn't mean that they're selling every 5 minutes. Isn't that part of the frustration that a lot of people have is that, oh, this is someone's grail card, grail card. And then and then 6 months later, it's back up for sale and whatever.
I don't know. I disagree. I think the investor likes that because that now increases the value and the demand for those certain cards that are being locked away now.
You mean if it comes back up for sale?
No, it just means that if they can't access it, that means it's just becoming more valuable. So if you can't access a card readily any minute, any day, like if there's a card you want, you can go find 6 copies of it for sale at any given moment, like the 89 Griffey PSA 10 Upper Deck. Like I don't want that card. It's a cool card, but I don't want it. I can go buy it any day, any time. There's like 17 options.
Yeah, let me clarify.
A collector doesn't like that.
Yeah, collector. I guess what I mean is if I'm thinking of if it's a serious investor in trading cards, they're not buying the 89 Upper Deck Griffey. They're going to go with more of kind of the stuff that you're playing in with, one of ones and out of tens and, kind of more of like high end Griffey stuff. Like the one, what was it? The Essential Credentials that just sold for a few $100,000. That's a massive card.
Keeps going up. They keep going up. That card's hitting the market more, which is weird, but it keeps selling at a high level. So that shows the demand's there. And I know who bought the other one, and I know the backstory of that. Actually, I got one of my Griffies from him to help him buy that.
But I think that if you're saying, a lot of people say like, man, an investor got it, so a collector couldn't get it. But how many collectors are buying?
No, and that's not actually happening all the time too. Because in that particular situation, that person got that card. They had to part ways with some cards they never would have parted ways with, and I was able to take advantage of that because I had a relationship with that person. And I was able to get a really cool Griffey that never sells, ever, that he probably never would have sold if he didn't think he had a chance to get that card. So he started, all right, throwing stuff out there. And I'm like, hey, oh my gosh, that's the card I've always wanted. You never can find it. So thankfully, he wanted to color up and get into a bigger card. It opens up, like as we talked about the other day, last week, I think, it opens up more cards to come out into the market for other collectors to get them. Now, if people hoard those cards and they keep becoming more and more valuable, collectors are kind of getting screwed because now they're too expensive. Those cards become too expensive because the demand keeps percolating and there's no supply because those collectors and those investors are holding onto those cards, which, yes, it's a good thing, but it also makes it more difficult to collect.
But question, and this is nuanced, of course. Let's say that investors buy all of the green PMG Barry Sanders. They're all locked away. So that one that just sold, and then there's let's say another couple of them pop up. I don't know how many actually are out there for sale. Let's say they're all kind of locked up in vaults. Yeah. Does that help kind of the red PMG folks to where, because it almost forces like the collector to come down to red, because the collector has to go to the next one. And that you could almost kind of use that for a lot of cards. If you're collecting Jordan cards, okay, they vaulted all of these, so that's gone. There's certain cards like Nat Turner is not letting go of a lot of cards. There's a lot of stuff he's got that's just never coming out, so, but then does that help kind of a little bit of a trickle down effect, for some of this stuff to where it's like, all right, well, but at the same time, it's going to limit the supply because collectors are like rushing to get into that next level down, which makes those more scarce because they're packing those away, and then it has a little bit of a trickle down effect
for those really iconic serial number sets and for the right player. The case in point, like with Michael Jordan, who I've been really into lately, building out a collection of his cards, and I go off of Cajun and Josh Dawson's
DPZ you influenced me on a card. Should I share
Do it? Show everybody what you did. I feel like I'm influencing poor Dustin, and Dustin influences me. We influence each other, so we're both buying cards.
It's bad. Yeah, it's not good when we're texting each other like, hey, did you see this on eBay? Did you see this? I'm like, oh man, I should not be doing this.
I sent you like 15 different like listings.
Sent me down a rabbit. Yeah, you sent me down a rabbit hole.
No, it's fun.
But that's the thing is, here's the thing with Jordan. I always kind of look at it as like, it's too expensive. The Jordan stuff is going to be too expensive. Let me see if I can pull this up here. But there are certain cards, and what's kind of nice about him is he has a wide swath of options that are really cool. Like there's a lot more options than I thought. So like here's the card essentially that DPZ shared with me, and it's this 95/96 SP Hollow Views. It's the die cut version, and it's a PSA 9 version of the card. And 8 is I think like $300 or $400. The 9 is right here. I got it. They're like 12 to 1,500. I probably set a new record for the 9. And then the 10 is like $8,000 because there's like 20 of them, or something like that. So I'm obviously not getting the 10, but the 9, I think there's like 100 or 120. It's not too bad, but it's just a badass card. It's a badass really looking card.
Yeah, I have it. I have the card in hand, and what's interesting about this particular card. So there's tiers. I think most people know what the hierarchy is now with that Cajun and Josh put together for Michael Jordan cards.
I need to send Cajun a note and say he screwed up because this is supposed to be tier 1. Because I just bought it.
Yeah, I'm sure you got it because you just bought it.
You got to redo the poster.
Redo the poster, man. No, this one's a tier 4 card, and there's 4 tiers, and obviously the higher you get, the more difficult it is to get cards. I started getting some of the tier 4 stuff, tier 3 and I got a few tier 2. But I've been hanging out down in tier 4, and I've been thinking like get PSA 8s and 9s in tier 3 and 4 because the 10s are all kind of running, but the 9s they're good cards, and you can still get a copy of a really cool card, and you don't have to spend a ton of money. And I don't think but that's for me. Like I want to have multiple cards. I don't want to just have like 5. Like I was doing that for a while, and that's so boring. Like I want to collect cards. I want to put together a cool collection of cards. So. But what's a cool little backstory on that card, that particular card, there's like holographic images of Michael Jordan or the player behind Michael Jordan on the card, and it's die cut. There's a version that's not die cut, and there's a version that's die cut. You got the die cut version, which is obviously more rare. Anything die cut in the 90s is a win. Just go for that always. So it's like a rule of thumb. But what's interesting about that, there are some error variations of that card where Antonio McDyess is actually the person in the holograph behind Michael Jordan. So when you get your card, you got to make sure it's Jordan.
Oh no!
Because if you get one with Antonio McDyess, it's actually cool. It's actually kind of adds a whole new level of interest to the card. But
all good, yeah.
That's collecting, right? Like what we're doing when we talk about that is collecting. Now, I don't expect those cards to go up in value in a crazy way. Do I think that there'll always be a demand for them? Absolutely. That's the cool thing about Michael Jordan, Kobe, and some of these bigger, LeBron. Those cards are going to sell. There's so many fans and collectors of those players, and they transcend the game. Griffey, they transcend the game. So people just know about them in general.
Do you think Kobe would be as big if he wasn't a Laker? I think him being a Laker is a huge help to his legacy. I think if he won 5 titles with the Blazers, you know, or something like that, I just don't think it would carry the same weight. He's just got such a West Coast or just another team. I don't know, whatever.
The market helps.
Charlotte,
Yeah,
you know,
if he was with the Knicks and did it, then they'd be the same. You know, like it would be this.
Well, if he won 5 titles with the Knicks, maybe it's a big enough fan base to where like he does have that. But if he's at a smaller market and he just, you know, clobbered everybody, I just don't know. You know,
I almost feel like he'd be bigger if he did it in New York. I think he'd be bigger than he is now.
Yeah, he might actually be in New York as a Knick. Yeah, they're crazy.
Oh yeah, if he won 5 titles for the Knicks,
yeah, fan base would be nuts.
He would. I think it'd be even bigger. But yeah. It's just, you got to look at that. You got to look at the fan base, and you know, and I love having some of these cards with some of these players that aren't the superstars, you know, and because it's cool to get a card. I saw my Ray Allen Superfractor from 2007. I'm auctioning my 2003 Topps or 2004 Topps Chrome for all you out there, or 2005. Sorry.
Oh yeah,
push it. That's up. I'm gonna push it because that's a big card I'm selling. And go to Fanatics. My 2005 Ray Allen Superfractor, 1 of 1. It is the earliest version of that card. That
when does it end?
We know there's a 2004. No, we don't know where it's at. There's a 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. I have the 7s, 2007 still, but I'm going to sell the 2005. I needed to, but
when does the auction end?
It ends this Sunday on Fanatics Weekly.
All right,
Fanatics Weekly there. Yeah, so we're so that those types of cards are really cool to have. It's like it's like I have 24 karat gold. I got the PNG. Okay, I got this. I got a credentials. I got a now. I've got a future. It's like I got one of everything. I was trying to collect one of everything to have like a piece of that for the hobby history kind of thing. It's been and so I can't afford some of the players. Like I can't afford, you know, a Michael Jordan in any of some of those stuff, but I can afford some other players. So it's kind of cool to have it. But that mentality, I still think that those kind of cards will still carry value. I just think that the separation is really going to occur with the big major players that are collected the most and the heaviest. And, but.
So was that part of your thought, like move out of some of the Ray Allen to get into Jordan? Was that part of the
that's why I did that. Yeah. Because I want to do, that's what I'm thinking.
How should we wrap, Dennis? We're coming up on 28 minutes. What's the final word? The final, you know, word for the crowd. Watch yourself. Be careful.
I think so. I think watch out, be mindful, and make sure whatever you're buying, you're happy hanging on to. If there's a bit of a correction, I don't think things are going to correct like they did back in 2023, 24. But make sure whatever you're getting your hands on, you're enjoying. And like I always said, I wouldn't sell anything that you feel like you won't be able to get back. That's rare enough or important enough to your collection that you wouldn't be able to get it back. But yeah, it's your own money. You do whatever you want with it. That's what I would say.
All right, buddy. We will wrap. It's another weekly Pick 6, not a podcast, a YouTube show. We'll be back hopefully next week. See you later, Dennis.
See you, bud. Take care, everybody.